Welcome, welcome everyone to the Best Damn Podcast. I am your host, John Keene. Tonight I am incredibly excited. We have got a really cool presentation for you guys. This is kind of a continuation of the recent videos that we have been, touching on. Especially pertaining to like prophecy, the end times. Just kind of like recently we've discussed the eventual economic collapse of the United States, possible civil war within the United States, Comet 3I Atlas, and the potentiality of asteroid impacts, comet impacts, as well as alien invasions, and all of this kind of leading to Judgment Day or the Day of the Lord or the second coming of Jesus Christ. We kind of looked at it from extra scriptural point of views, diving into Norse mythologies and Ragnarok, the Book of Enoch and the Fall of the Watchers, and we've kind of like allowed this to really take shape to give us an understanding of exactly what time we are in and how the events have really played out from the beginning and from a pagan, polytheistic point of view to where we are now, right? And what it looks like biblically. So tonight will be incredibly interesting. We are going to dive deep. This will be a very deep dive. We are going to be looking at egregores, for those of you that are familiar, and how they are created and the power that they have, over those who create them or believe in them. We will also be looking at the secrets of Fatima, 3 days of darkness, the second coming of Jesus Christ, and the Schofield-Darby pre-tribulation rapture doctrine. If I was to say that I had a shortage of information to share tonight, I'd be lying. I don't know if I'll be able to get all of this out tonight, but I am going to try. So, we're going to be looking at end times, prophecy, scripture. I mean, we've already been looking at the Hopi and everything, but tonight is going to be primarily focused on the Bible, as well as dispelling some of like the false doctrines and deceptions, like the New Age deception that I feel is taking people in this present day to a really bad place. It's like the spirituality without accountability, without the morality, right? For those of you that aren't familiar with me, and if you are watching this in the live stream, or we're streaming, I think, on Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, Rumble. Everybody make sure to go follow me on Rumble, rumble.com, Best Damn Podcast. If you are watching on the live stream, please let me know if you can see me, if you can hear me, if we've got, the screen share going, if the audio is good, video is good, all that good stuff. And consider hitting that like, and comment and interacting. I'll be checking the chat, and it helps with the algorithms to get more people in as well. And like share the links. That's the best way to support, is by sharing the links manually. And if you would like to donate and support to the channel and the work here, you can do that. The links are in the description: PayPal, Cash App, Facebook Messenger. Join me over on Patreon or Locals on Rumble. So those of you who aren't familiar with me, I've been doing this probably around 10 years now. It doesn't seem like that long to me. It seems like it's like I feel like I'm just getting started, because I went through so much doing this. And a lot of people, doing it in the public, people see your trials and tribulations, and not all are so graceful. you know. Around 2020, I had reached like the peak of my popularity, really, with the content creation, and that's making good money, doing pretty good numbers, doing well, right? Had other people working for me the whole nine. 2020 rolls around, my father passed away. We had all of the COVID stuff. I was completely deplatformed, shadow banned, demonetized, every way you could imagine, right? They just basically took me out, um, neutralized me. And then kind of, I fell prey to, pride, which I feel like is incredibly huge within the new age, right? The new age to me is the gateway drug to this age of deception or this strong delusion, right? Through pride, I kind of like had my own undoing, basically lost all the support I had. Everyone stopped following me. I got really heavily into the occult, kind of like, Luciferian beliefs and things like that. Um, you know, and it doesn't happen overnight. It was meticulous, it was incremental, bit by bit, day by day. And what the new age did was it kind of like allowed me to, like play into my pride. It's like feeling like I was special, or that through knowledge I could attain some sort of ascendance or godhood or, power, right? And I think that's what's alluring to everyone, ultimately. And you can ask anyone that's watching me for a period of time. I was a devout follower of Jesus Christ, um, and I could have never imagined, like switching up or anything like that. But nonetheless, it did happen. I ended up being heavily attacked by uh, cults or occult groups, secret societies. I believe government was involved as well for the things I was saying. I mean, uh, pride goeth before destruction. It broke me. I was broken mentally, emotionally, uh, financially, every way you can imagine by the end of it. um, and I had seen where all of this had led me. And it's like, I tell you what, this is why I think it's so important to like really, and this is what's really kind of like made me decide to really try to come back and really do this again and do it right. For one, God has humbled me and showed me like what my purpose and what my calling is in life, and that I was not living in that whatsoever, right? For years, even. And for two, I think, and I watched many people around me experiencing the same thing. People that, once followed Jesus and shit like that, and then next thing you know, they get cooked online by joining these groups and all of this, and it's like bit by bit, right? Whether it's through Gnosticism or the mystery Babylon stuff, like whatever, the occult has a uncanny way of creeping in on a person spiritually. And by the end of this, I can tell you this much. Uh, when I finally got the demonic attachment off of me, and I had an extreme demonic attachment to where I was like fragmented, for one, from the targeting and the trauma and the handlers. Uh, I was definitely MK Ultra heavily, and I know that that sounds outlandish to some people. It's like, I promise you, you don't have to be a celebrity or anyone important for that to happen to you. It's happening to each and every one of us just through the content that we ingest and the things that we watch on a daily basis. But not only was I so fragmented, but I was borderline schizophrenic. Like, my reality had fallen apart. I don't know if you guys ever are familiar with Tracy Twyman. You know, before she was unalived, whoops, what happened here? That was strange. Very strange. That was strange. Okay, hold on, guys. I don't know what the heck just happened here. All right, I got it back. That was weird. That was weird. Okay. So before she was unalive, Tracy Twyman, I apologize for that. She was experiencing a series of uh, targeting as well. And what happened? Did I lose my screen share? Hold on 1 second, people. Interesting. Can someone in the chat let me know if I still have my screen share? You guys should see an image of Our Lady of Fatima on the screen. If you don't see that, then something is wrong. I might have to restart the screen, which would really suck. But nonetheless, that is so strange. I don't know what the heck just happened here. Can I get someone in the chat to help me out? Because I can't see my screen on my stuff here. It looks black to me. So, what the fuck? All right, I don't know what has just happened. I think I have to start my screen mover. That is strange, man. Can anybody, in the chat help me out here? All right, here we go. Okay. I think we got the screen back. That was so weird. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, black screen. Are we good now? We should be good now. I need to know if we're good now. Those in the chat, let me know if we're good now. I'm seeing the screen again, so let me know if you can see it. Okay, cool. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Sorry about that, guys. I don't know what the heck happened. I think it's weird that I was talking about that and then all of a sudden my screen goes black, but whatever. But anyway, so to kind of pick back up where I left off, so the Tracy Twyman stuff, right? She was experiencing this type of targeting. If you guys are familiar with targeted individuals, where she had her IP address cloned and her experience on the internet was altered, right? And when I heard her talking about this, recently I posted a video of her dead man switch and stuff like that on Rumble, because I can't really post it on nothing else because of the stuff she was talking about. She was heavily into the pedo gate and all of these things before her passing, right? And she allegedly took herself out, but she was going to the FBI and everything before all this happened, which I did mention a few weeks ago. The FBI came out to question me as well. But she was experiencing this cloning of her IP address and her internet basically being like an entirely unique experience for her. And I experienced this same phenomenon. Now, it almost sounds lunatic. It's like lunacy, right? To think that someone or some entity has the power to clone your IP, and every site that you see is personalized because they are surveilling you, a lot of us, and they do this through the Patriot Act, FISA, all of this, right? Collecting all of this data, read the small print on all of the social media and stuff. Okay. And what they do is they psychologically profile people. And when they consider them dissidents or stuff like that, they can unleash that on you. I had the same experience. And what I had noticed was not only was, AI involved in all of this, and my experience was incredibly intense and scary. It was also extremely demonic, right? And I've talked about this in the past that when we fall out of a state of grace is when we can allow hexes and curses and all of these things to enter into our lives. It may not seem like a big deal to a lot of you guys, but these small little things within the new age, like uh, Christ consciousness, for instance, instead of saying that Jesus Christ is the Messiah and he's God in man form on earth, you're saying he's basically he's a liar, for one, because he's not God. And for two, that he's just a good guy. He's just a good dude. And this is where I believe we open the door to a lot of things, right? Once we start compromising our doctrine. And I want you to think about churchianity today in our world. Online, we have this rampant new age where everybody believes they're their own God. They're practicing forms of Luciferianism and Satanism, and they've all been initiated into these mysteries one way or another. This process of illumination that they're probably not even familiar with or recognizing that's happening. And then on the other hand, we have this version of Zionistic Schofield Darby pre-tribulation rapture for those, these doctrines of devils for those that actually are, a part of the church. So tonight we're going to look at these particular differences and show you just how easy, how subtle it is, and exactly what the time that we are in actually has in store for us as well. I'm going to make a conscious effort to relaunch everything and just really go hard as I can on all of this. So let's go ahead and jump into this. We're going to start first with Fatima. And we're going to jump into the message in just a moment. Now, the Vatican published an official message of Fatima document explaining the three parts of the Fatima secret and the church's reading of the third secret when it was released in 2000. Sister Lucia's original memoirs and other primary Fatima documents are available. Her written testimonies are the primary sources for all secrets of Fatima. The third secret text, which was released by the Vatican in 2000 and has been the subject of controversy and alternative interpretations, claims that more material was withheld. The 3 days of darkness is not official church doctrine. It is a recurring theme in private revelations attributed to multiple mystics and unpopular among traditionalist circles. The hierarchy, though, has not endorsed it as public teaching. Many speculate as prophetic sources the 3 days to a Fatima-style chastisement narrative, and these are primarily found in the private revelation archives. So we're going to go ahead and jump into this. And we're going to first look at the secrets of Fatima. So we should still be screen sharing here. Looks like we are. Okay. Now, this is actually from the Vatican itself. It says a congregation for the doctrine of the faith. And I want you to kind of think too, right? We're going to look at CE5 or psionics, all types of weird stuff, because we are in a strange each time. The Bible talks about in the last days that knowledge will be increased, right? But it also speaks about, uh, men will basically not have sound doctrine and they'll follow the delusions of their own mind, right? That many false prophets will arise. And I think that is more evident than any other time that we can imagine. I recently seen a video, in the whole CE5 contact of extraterrestrials where they're allegedly using psionics. These are rituals, man. These are rituals, right? They are seances, is what they are, and they're calling it extraterrestrial contact. Same thing with channeled messages. We are being incredibly deceived. The government is doing this whole disclosure thing to where they're now like unveiling, in essence, all of these, UAPs and all of this technology, and even preparing us for what appears to be some sort of engagement by an extraterrestrial species. And think about what all of the whistleblowers, the members of Congress and all of this, like, that actually cover this, talk about. They call them interdimensional entities, right? Interdimensional entities. They are talking about spiritual beings. Now, I am of the firm belief that what we are dealing with are not visitors from another solar system. They are not another species that is sitting on a planet somewhere, living in houses and building pyramids and all of that, like we would like to believe, and even using technology. I believe they don't need technology. If these indeed are angels, right, or the fallen angels is what I believe they are, those that interfered with the development of mankind, teaching us the secrets, like in the book of Enoch talks about, right? It says that these entities, they taught us the mysteries that we weren't supposed to know yet. We were supposed to learn those on our own naturally, right? And it corrupted mankind. Well, think about to this very day what's going on with all this phenomena and how we're being gifted craft and technology and fiber optics and Velcro and Kevlar and it's the same thing because there's nothing new under the sun. This is the same story from the beginning, and it's the same story now. That's why you'll see, things like CERN, which is built on the temple of Apollyon, which is also Abaddon from the Bible, the king of the bottomless pit. He also correlates to Apophis or Pepe, the god of chaos and darkness. That abyss is where these fallen angels are shackled, right? It's their prison. And at the last days, they are released out of this prison, brought onto the earth to wreak havoc, to wreak havoc. And I want you to look at like CERN and the logos being 666, right? Cernos being, this ancient god, and it being built on the temple of Apollyon, and it being the only, international organization that has a mascot, and the mascot is Shiva the Destroyer, and how they have spells or prayers in every language written and placed around this thing. Even Nostradamus has prophecies pertaining to this when he talks about Saturn being converted from iron to gold and bringing destruction on Geneva, quatrain 944. I believe that this is the opening to the bottomless pit. And I brought this up recently. I believe it Clock Shavings, the book by Tracy Twyman, to kind of mention her once again, where she did the series of seances through a Ouija board. And it was a Masonic Ouija board at that, right? Which is a form of divination. We are told not to do that in the Bible. And she first talked to the entity Cain and the Black Sun, right? And how, the Black Sun goes back to this tale of these two brothers, right? Enki and Enlil, or Quetzalcoatl and Tezcatlipoca, right? And the Black Sun being the dark brother, right? The brother of darkness. And I did a video on Operation High Jump and Admiral Byrd and the Hollow Earth, and all of this is, allegedly located at Rupas Negras, right? Where is this opening to the Hollow Earth, which actually goes down to Sheol, the realm of the dead or the underworld. And think about all of the ancient civilizations like the Hopi and the Ant people and all of these people that are talking about, these extraterrestrial entities or these interdimensional entities that are living under the earth, from dwarves to elves, right, to the ant people. And then when Tracy did this, she eventually was connected with Baphomet, which she believes is a symbolic representation of the Masonic God, right? Like when we look at the Lord of Hosts or the God of the Bible, he has many personas or personalities, okay? He's El Shaddai, he's got many different names, Jehovah, Hashem, right? Like these are pieces of his personality. They were naming, and the Jews were naming pieces of his persona because he was so expansive and so big as an entity. There was multiple entities dwelling within him. So when you got a hold of one, right, that's why he's wrathful, vengeful, and angry in one moment. And then in the next, he's graceful and just. These are just personas of this large, omnipresent, all-knowing, all-seeing God. Well, think about the inverse of that. These other entities, this is why they have masculine and feminine forms. This is why they have different archetypical characters, right? Over the aeons that you have seen presented through different mythos and religions and spiritual movements and schools of thought. Because they are bigger entities than we are as well. I mean, think about you personally. You as a human being have many different facets, right? You can be angry, you can be sad, you can be lustful, you can be vengeful, you can bring out all of these different facets of your character. Personas, if you will. And if you're fragmented, like a lot of these dark entities are, right? Imagine to the extent of what that, is. And is that really what we're seeing with, the hierarchy of Satan and hell? When we see like the different dukes and kings and, colonels and commanders and sergeants in the army of hell, from Satan to Lucifer to Lucifuge Refocado, right? Like all of these different entities to Beelzebub to all of this, are these just different facets of Satan? And then think about what you see in the symbolism of Baphomet, right? It is this, goat-headed god with male and female parts, the caduceus and all of this, right? It's like this embodiment of all of these different aspects, right? Or archetypes. So when she talks to this creature, it talks about in the end times and in the last days, there is this joining together, of the, and Gnostic teachings talk about this. I reference this text a lot because it's just to me, one of the most important Gnostic texts, and it's a really good read. And it kind of derives from some of Genesis. It's called Reality of the Rulers, or Hypostasis of the Archons. And in this particular text, it talks about how the waters above the firmament are separated from the waters below the firmament. Right? And then I want you to think about the Aesir and the Norse gods, and how, we have, this is Midgard and all of this, right? It's like this jumping point between the higher heavens and the lower heavens. Well, in the last days, something happens, some portal, some dimensional object, which I believe is CERN, connects these spaces. And when it does, and this is what that Baphomet said to Tracy, right, through her channeled or seance messages, that in the Hopi prophecy, which I just covered 2 videos ago, the same thing. It says that this will be the end of time as we know it. And I want you to think, and this is how I judge everything. Is it backed by scripture? Right? Does scripture support what is being said? And I believe it does. Not only does it talk about the opening of the bottomless pit, right, and the king of the abyss, right, and all of the locusts that are coming up out of the bottomless pit, and how this smoke that rises up, the sun becomes black, the moon becomes blood. It also says that men will seek death in those days and not find it. And, the only kind of thing that my, limited understanding or capacity for these things to, wrap my head around is able to kind of logically come to a conclusion with is there's no time, so there's no death. That all these realms are kind of joined together, and I believe it's done through this. And I believe that's what the 3 days of darkness is. And whether this is brought on by this appearance of this destroyer, and I want you to think about, what is the guy's name? Chris Bledsoe, the one who does like the CE5 stuff and the psionics and all of this, shit where they're doing the psychic movement to, channel these orbs, right? And communicate with these orbs they're calling extraterrestrials, but all they really are is spirits. Anybody who's ever ghost hunted or studied the paranormal knows that that's electromagnetic energy, and these orbs are spirit or poltergeist energy, right? Physical manifestation or plasmatic manifestation of a spiritual or a conscious energy, That's the reason all of this stuff is being unveiled to us now. That's the reason all of this stuff is being brought to us now. It's because they know that it's time and it can no longer be hidden, because we are getting ready to experience it. So they want to hijack the experience and make sure that we see it from the skewed, distorted perspective that they want us to see it. Chris Bledsoe also goes on to say that on Easter of 2026 will be the return of Christ, when the star Regulus is above the Great Pyramid. That the star will appear to be blue in the sky and then turn red. Now think about the correlation to the Hopi prophecy, which talks about the blue and the red Kachina. That first, the blue Kachina dances in the plaza, removing its mask, right? And then the purifier, which is the red Kachina, will sit in the heavens watching humanity to see who remembers the old ways or the old teachings before he comes down and wreaks havoc. When we look at like the Norse mythology, this is akin to Fenrir, right? The wolf, and him taking his all-devouring jaws that are going from the top of the firmament to the bottom, taking everything in its path with fire and flames coming out of its nostrils, We look at the cauldron and it talks about the destroyer, right? This all consuming fire that's ever pervasive and always changing, with mouths and fangs and dread, and men's heart will fail them for fear, and that water will, or their courage will flow from them like water from a broken pitcher. The great and terrible day of the Lord. And think about Exodus and Moses and how, God came and he was, a pillar of fire by night and a cloud of smoke by day. And I believe this is what brings on these 3 days of darkness and all of this. And these secrets of Fatima are talking about, more signs or revelations, if you will, to let us know that we are in that end time. So, and if you are in the chat, please let me know that you can see the screen and hear me well and all of that. I would appreciate it. As the second millennium gives way to the third, Pope John Paul II has decided to publish the next of the third part of the Secret of Fatima. The 20th century was one of the most crucial in human history, with its tragic and cruel events culminating in the assassination attempt on the sweet Christ on earth. Now a veil is drawn back on a series of events which make history and interpret it in depth. And a spiritual perspective alien to present day attitudes, often tainted with rationalism. Throughout the history, there have been supernatural apparitions and signs which go to the heart of human events, and which, to the surprise of the believers and non believers alike, play their part in the unfolding of history. These manifestations can never contradict the content of faith and must therefore have their focus in the core of Christ's proclamation. The Father's love, which leads men and women to conversion and bestows the grace required to abandon oneself to Him with filial devotion. This too is the message of Fatima, which, with its urgent call to conversion and penance, draws us to the heart of the gospel. Fatima is undoubtedly the most prophetic of modern apparitions. The first and second parts of The Secret, which are here published in sequence so as to complete the documentation, refer especially to the frightening vision of hell, devotion to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, the Second World War, and finally its prediction of the immense damage that Russia would do to humanity by abandoning the Christian faith and embracing communist totalitarianism. And what they're talking about, just I hate to tell you, when Russia did this was the overthrowing of the czars, and this was a Bolshevik revolution, right? They called it the Russian Revolution, but it was a Judaic revolution of communism and a mass murder and genocide of Christians by the tens of millions. We are experiencing something very similar in nature all over the world. Look in Africa right now, the things that are taking place, right? And though they may be soft coups, right, that we're experiencing, look at America and how we become so morally bankrupt because of this same type of revolution that's been brought to our doorstep. And I want you to think of who the God of revolution actually is. It's a revolt, it's a rebellion. It's not in line with conservatism and the ideas that, we essentially were built and founded on, although they are kind of, Luciferian in principle in this age of enlightenment, and the founding of this, in 1776 of the Bavarian Illuminati and all of these different countries, and these downfalls of monarchs and all of this, like in this bringing in of democracy. in these republics. In this pursuit of liberty. You know, we see the statues and the idols that are built all over our country, right? To what God, we truly worship and are founded on. But at heart, the people of this country, that what actually brought the prosperity to the country was Christianity, right? That was the soul of the population. And irregardless of what the soul of the governance was, right? And we still see that true to this day in some regard. The soul of the government definitely being authoritarian, Luciferian, right? Pushing these LGBTQ, propaganda, the confusion of the genders and all that. And we're making a turn because the masses are rising up and pushing back against the tide. We're seeing the results of what these revolutions actually bring. When everybody's created into special classes or groups or minorities, right? It's like nobody, and in this pursuit of equality, nobody ends up having equality. You just get privileged classes of small groups of people. You just get race baiting, racial tension, racial wars, civil wars, or the socialist structure, right? This dream of this utopian dream that we see within Freemasonry and Zionism and all of this, right? Of this new world order, this one world system, that's run by government, right? And we know how this, communistic approach, this socialistic approach turns out. We've seen the experiments, right? With Stalin and all of it, right? We've seen the experiments. North Korea, and it ends up in bread lines, people starving, people lacking. Think about the Soviet Union, the government collapsing. And we've been poisoned with a mind virus against our own ancestry, our own heritage, our own values, right? Our own core beliefs. And we're taught that we're inherently bad or evil or wrong by these people that don't even stick true to their own heritage and have brought in this Babylonian mysticism, right? And this perversion of the laws of God, this hedonistic point of view, this hedonistic scope of life, and force fed it to us just like it was force fed in the Bolshevik Revolution. But we see where it's leading. All of these Arab Springs and these mass migrants and all of these things, we see where it's leading. But these are all things that, were promised in the last days. That brother would rise against brother. We hear wars and rumors of wars and just all of these things, right? This chaos that we see. In 1917, no one could have imagined all this. The three Pastorimbos, I think I said that wrong, Pastorimbos of Fatima, see, listen, and remember. And Lucia, the surviving witness, commits it all to paper when ordered to do so by the Bishop of Lyria with Our Lady's permission. For the account of the first two parts of the secret, which have already been published and are therefore known, we have chosen the text written by Sister Lucia in the third memoir of the 31st of August, 1941. Some annotations were added to the fourth memoir of 8th of December, 1941. The third part of the secret was written by the order of His Excellency, the Bishop of Lyria, and the Most Holy Mother on the 3rd of January, 1944. There is only one manuscript, which is here reproduced photostatically. The sealed envelope was initially in the custody of the Bishop of Lyria to ensure better protection for the secret. The envelope was placed in the secret archives of the Holy Office on the 4th of April, 1957. The Bishop of Lyria informed Sister Lucius of this. According to the records of the archives, the commissary of the Holy Office, Father Pierre Paul Philippe, with the agreement of the Cardinal Alfredo Ottaviani, brought the envelope containing the third part of the secret of Fatima to Pope John XXIII on the 17th of August, 1959. And after some hesitation, His Holiness said, "We shall wait. I shall pray. I shall let you know what I decide." In fact, Pope John decided to return the sealed envelope to the Holy Office and not to reveal the third part of the secret. Paul read the contents with the substitute Archbishop Angelo Diacchia on 27th of March, 1965, and returned the envelope to the archives of the Holy Office, deciding not to publish the text. John Paul II, for his part, asked for the envelope containing the third part of the secret. Following the assassination attempt on the 13th of May, 1981, on the 18th of July, 1981, Cardinal Franzo Eapere, prefect of the congregation, gave 2 envelopes to Archbishop Eduardo Martinez Samalo, substituted the Secretariat of State. One white envelope containing Sister Lucia's original text in Portuguese, the other orange with the Italian translation of the secret. On the following 11th August, Archbishop Martinez returned the 2 envelopes to the archives of the Holy Office. And one thing I feel like we're seeing here is this common theme of they continued to make themselves privy to this information, but they didn't believe that the masses, should know this. As it is well known, Pope John Paul II immediately thought of consecrating the world to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, and he himself composed a prayer for what he called an act of entrustment, which was to be celebrated in the Basilica of St. Mary Major on the 7th of June, 1981. The Solemnity of Pentecost, the day chosen to commemorate the 1600th anniversary of the First Council of Constantinople, and the 1550th anniversary of the Council of Ephesus. Since the Pope was unable to be present, his recorded address was broadcast. The following is the part which refers specifically to the act of entrustment. Mother of all individuals and peoples, you know all their suffering and hopes. In your motherly heart, you feel all the struggles between good and evil, between light and darkness that convulse the world. Accept the plea which we make in the Holy Spirit directly to your heart, and embrace with the love of the Mother and the handmaid of the Lord those who most await this embrace, and also those who act of entrustment you to await in a particular way. Take under your motherly protection the whole human family, which with affectionate love we entrust to you, O Mother. May there dawn for everyone the time of peace and freedom, the time of truth, of justice, and of hope. In order to respond more fully to the request of Our Lady, the Holy Father desired to make it more explicit during the Holy Year of the Redemption, the act of entrustment of the 7th of May, 1981, which had been repeated in Fatima on the 13th of May, 1982, on the 25th of March, 1984, in St. Peter's Square, are recalling that The fiat uttered by Mary at the Annunciation, the Holy Father, in spiritual union with the bishops of the world who had been convoked beforehand, entrusted all men and women and all peoples with the Immaculate Heart of Mary, in terms which recalled the heartfelt words spoken in 1981. O Mother of all men and women and of all peoples, you know who all their sufferings and their hopes. You who have a mother's awareness of all the struggles between good and evil, between light and darkness, which afflict the modern world, accept the cry which we, moved by the Holy Spirit, address directly to your heart. Embrace with the love of the mother and the handmaid of the Lord this human world of ours, which we entrust and consecrate to you, for we are full of concern for the earthly and eternal destiny of individuals and peoples. In a special way, we entrust and consecrate to you those individuals and nations which particularly need to be thus entrusted and consecrated. We have recourse to your protection, but Holy Mother of God, despise not our petitions and our necessities. The Pope then continued more forcefully with more specific references, as though commenting on the message of Fatima and its sorrowful fulfillment. Behold, as we stand before you, Mother of Christ, before your immaculate heart, we desire, together with the whole church, to unite ourselves with the consecration which, for love of us, your Son made himself to the Father. For their sake, he said, I consecrate myself that they may also be consecrated in the truth. We wish to unite ourselves with our Redeemer in this, his consecration for the world and for the human race, which in his divine heart has the power to obtain pardon and to secure reparation. The power of this consecration lasts for all time and embraces all individuals, peoples, and nations. It overcomes every evil that the spirit of darkness is able to awaken. And it has, in fact, awakened in our times, in the heart of man, and in his history. How deeply we feel the need for the consecration of humanity and in the world, our modern world, in union with Christ Himself, for the redeeming work of Christ must be shared by the world through the church. The present year of the redemption shows this, a special jubilee of the whole church. Above all creatures, may you be blessed, you, the handmaid of the Lord, who in the fullest way obeyed the divine call. Hail to you, you who are holy, united to the redeeming consecration of your Son. Mother of the church, enlighten the people of God along the paths of faith, hope, and love. Enlighten especially the peoples whose consecration and entrustment by us you are awaiting. Help us to live in the truth of the consecration of Christ for the entire human family of the modern world. And entrusting to you, O Mother of the world, all individuals and peoples, we also entrust to you this very consecration of the world, placing it in your motherly heart, immaculate heart. Help us to conquer the menace of evil, which so easily takes root in the hearts of the people of today, and those who have measurable effects already weigh down upon our modern world and seem to block the path toward the future. From famine and war, deliver us. From nuclear war, from incalculable self destruction, from every kind of war, deliver us. From sins against the life of man, from its very beginning, deliver us. From hatred and from the demeaning of the dignity of the children of God, deliver us. From every kind of injustice in the life of society, both national and international, deliver us. From readiness and trample on the commandments of God, deliver us. From attempts to stifle in human hearts the very truth of God, deliver us. From the loss of awareness of good and evil, deliver us. From sins against the Holy Spirit, deliver us, deliver us. Accept, O Mother of Christ, this cry laden with the sufferings of all individual human beings, laden with the sufferings of whole societies. Help us with the power of the Holy Spirit to conquer all sin, the individual sin and the sin of the world, sin in all its manifestations. Let there be revealed once more in the history of the world the infinite saving power of the redemption, the power of merciful love. May it put a stop to evil. May it transform consciences. May your immaculate heart reveal for all the light of hope. Sister Lucia personally confirmed that the solemn and universal act of consecration corresponded to what Our Lady wished. And the documentation presented here, 4 other texts have been added to the manuscripts of Sister Lucia. The Holy Father's letter of the 19th of April 2000 to Sister Lucia, an account of the conversation of the 27th of April 2000 with Sister Lucia. The statement which the Holy Father appointed Cardinal Angelo Sodano, Secretary of State, to read on the 13th of May 2000. The theological commentary by Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. And, I find it interesting that they chose the 13th of May to do that in the year 2000. If we look at like the numerology and the symbolism within that, right? I know a lot of people, especially those of the Protestant faith, which I am one. We have issue with this kind of worship of the mother, right? Without trying to be offensive to Catholics, because I could just not grasp or understand the depth of it. The thing that kind of worries me with the whole mother thing is like this whole divine feminine and universalism that we see within the New Age and the occult as well, right? And these connections to the Vatican from, you got to think these were the Romans, right? And they converted from, a power of political governance to a power of religious political power, right? Under Constantine, you know. He's seen the cross in the sky, or the sign of the cross in the sky, and I believe he heard these words. It says, with this sign, you will win, or something to that effect. So he went to start fighting his wars under the banner of the cross, right? And as the Roman Empire was dissolved and fell, it became the Vatican, a religious empire, which we've talked about the secret oath of induction of the Jesuits, right? And, the whole laying waste, boil, and slay, and all of that to the Protestant, heretics, basically. That's the extreme oath of induction, and you think of like the Black Pope and all of this, right? And their connections to the Jesuits, and these connections to the Templars and all of this, and like it really kind of makes you somewhat hesitant to just accept everything at face value because of the resemblance of that divine feminine universalism aspect of the occult, right? Um, and how the Bible talks about, this scarlet woman, right? The whore of Babylon. And I'm not calling Jesus' mom a whore at all, right? But it makes you wonder if those that are within these secret societies and mysteries and all of this have tried to confuse the language in some way, right? And push the worship of that scarlet woman, right, onto the people, and the essentially and the deity of Abraxas and all of this, which we see with the Gnosticism and the mysteries and all of this as well, right? And I'm not saying that's the case. I'm saying that's what gives me pause or hesitation, is like, because I've seen so much of that happen, throughout time, whether intentional or unintentional, we see the swapping of deities and consciousness in place of one for another, right? And like leading people astray. The third part of the secret refers to Our Lady's words. If not, Russia will spread her errors throughout the world. Causing wars and persecutions of the church. The good will be martyred. The Holy Father will have much to suffer. Various nations will be annihilated. And, I believe this is the reference to the Bolshevik Revolution, right? When the Zionists rose up within, and they were hedonists at the lowest of levels, right? And remember that they have this 1,000 points of light type of point of view, to where it's like they descend to the lowest depths of evil in order to ascend, right? And that's why they have these perverse rituals where they swap sexual partners and, all of these things, right? Sleep with each other's wives and all of this, right? It's supposed to be this most extreme version of perversion to create this descending, right? And when they descend to their lowest point, only then in their belief system can they ascend to the Father. And that they believe with this 1,000 points of light that when creation was created, that within matter, that God had so much light that even the matter that we see now and experience as matter or physical reality had light trapped within it, right? So they basically needed to extract that light out of the darkness by descending down to the debaucherous and based, you know, deeds. And many people even believe that, and these are not your Orthodox Jews, right? Or Messianic Jews. They're not the same at all. They have a very, very different take on things. And if you look at the Talmud and things like this is where you start to see these extremely disturbing things that talks about, even the best of the Gentiles deserves to, be RIP'd. And that Christ is boiling in his own excrement in these type of things, right? The third part of the secret is a symbolic revelation referring to this part of the message conditioned by whether we accept or not what the message itself asks of us. If my requests are heeded, Russia will be converted and there will be peace. If not, she will spread her errors throughout the world, etc. And think about this. Russia was indeed converted, right? It's a Christian nation now, and they don't allow any of this, nonsense. And because of that, they become a political enemy with the New World Order. Even though many people have tried to draw connections and parallels and tie Putin to Judaism. But he seems to be vehemently opposed to it. And this reminds me of the modern day father of Freemasonry. And I want you to understand that all of this Freemasonic, Illuminati, Knights Templars, Knights of Malta, Knights of Columbus, all of these mystery schools, Gnosticism, secret societies, these are all mystery Babylon religions and fraternal orders, right? Brotherhoods. And their brotherhoods under the watchful eye of Minerva, right? The owl, um, which is what you see in Bohemian Grove, right? This also correlates to um, with Moloch and the Star of David and Baal and all of this, the Canaanite gods, right? And we've talked about how, the Sidonia region on the prime meridian or Tropic of Cancer, Tropic of Capricorn, right? These places on the earth, this prime meridian and stuff being like the start of civilization. And that things, rolled over to Egypt from there, and that you even see this reflected on the planet Mars, right? And that they went from there, right? Sidonia, which is the dog star, right? Like, or Sidonia region, right? And the dog star, Sirius, and all of this, right? And then the Canine. And then I want you to think of like the genetic disposition of canines, right? Fangs. And you can see direct correlations to like Raphaim, Gibborim, Nephilim, right? Like all of these different Aims, which are different versions or variations of the fallen or the seeds of the serpent. That's why Christ, when he refers to them as a brood of vipers, right? You are of your father, the father of lies. And he talks about this synagogue of Satan that claims to be, but are not, right? And let us not say that it is God who is punishing us in this way. On the contrary, it is people themselves who are preparing their own punishment. In his kindness, God warns us and calls us to the right path while respecting the freedom he has given us. Hence, people are responsible. And I told you this in yesterday's stream, right? How when we go to hell, we're not being condemned to hell by God at all. It's through our lifestyles and the choices that we make, and where attention goes, energy flows, right? And where that energy flows, that's what we are worshiping and giving reverence to. That's what we are selectively choosing. And our afterlife reflects our life and our choices within our life. Right? And that's why it talks about those who loses his life will gain it, right? Because it's like it's the sacrifice of the physical, the sacrifice of your physical life and pleasures and satiating yourself that actually gives you eternal life, right? Sacrificing yourself, your will over to God, Jesus Christ, right? Accepting that sacrifice of atonement because you can't live up to the law. The law is a curse. And think about who is actually under said curse. These same group of people, And you see these two factions, right? The Vatican and the Pharisees, right? Battling it out for supremacy, and probably the two most powerful factions on the world to this day. But then when we go to hell, it's absent of all of the things present within God. God, has the waters of life, there's springs of water, so there's no water. God gives us the breath, so there's no air. It's tormenting because it's minus anything that is of his presence or essence. And because we rejected his presence and essence within our life. The decision of His Holiness Pope John Paul to make public the third part of the secret Fatima brings to an end a period of history marked by tragic human lust for power and evil, yet pervaded by the merciful love of God and the watchful care of the Mother and Jesus of the Church. The action of God, the Lord of history, The co-responsibility of man and the drama of his creative freedom are the two pillars upon which human history is built. Our Lady, who appeared at Fatima, recalls these forgotten values. She reminds us that man's future is in God and that we are active and responsible partners for creating that future. And like, just consider too, it's the respect of free will, right? We're not slaves here, you know. That's why when we like look at like governance and all of these things, that's why it's a government for the people, by the people, instead of the other way around, because they're not government given rights, they're God given rights, right? We're free by choice of God. And that's why it's so dangerous for governments of the world, especially communist governments, Christians, because they serve God, not government, right? And there's no threat that you can make, because they're willing to be beheaded, they're willing to die for their beliefs, for their God, you know, and be a martyr, because there's no greater honor than that, within itself, to be willing to give your life for Jesus because Jesus gave his life for you, you know. What is a secret? It seems to me that I can reveal it since I have already permission from heaven to do so. God's representatives on earth have authorized me to do this several times in various letters, one of which I believe is in your keeping, this letter from Father Joseph Bernardo Gonçalves. And in it, he advises me to write to the Holy Father, suggesting, among other things, that I should reveal the secret. I did say something about it, but in order not to make my letter too long, since I was told to keep it short, I confined myself to the essentials, leaving it to God to provide another more favorable opportunity. In my second account, I have already described in detail the doubt which tormented me from the 13th of June until the 13th of July, and how it disappeared completely during the apparition on that day. See, and this is that 13 symbolism that we see within, Freemasonry and all of this. And, I want you to think about it, the 13, and the darkness always mocks and mimics, right, what the light does. So when we see, there's no 13s on the elevators because of like the Masonic occultic views and all of this, right? 13 being a prominent number along with 33. Okay. And in numerology, it's essentially you drop the one anyway, so it's three, right? We have a triune or a trinity type of God, right? So there's that. And then also, 13 represents a multitude of things, like the 13 powerful bloodlines, or the, 12 disciples and then Christ. The 12 signs of the zodiac, of the zodiacal wheel, and the sun, right? And the old calendars before the switch to Gregorian and all of this, and the changing of the dates and times and edicts and all of this, there were 13 months as well. And if we broke down all of uh, the months into lunar cycles and followed a lunar calendar, like a 4 week, 28 day, which is what the actual cycle of the feminine follows, right? Um, we would get those 13 months again. And I find it to be very interesting that the biological clock also correlates to astrological or celestial bodies as well, right? Mars correlates to the internal clock of man. Venus correlates to the internal clock of woman. The sun correlates to the internal clock of man. As we renew and rejuvenate every day, our semen, right, every day is brand new, and we can have children and vitality and all of this. And then women, their cycle operates like with the moon on the 28 days. The first part is the vision of hell. Our Lady showed us a great sea of fire, which seemed to be under the earth. Plunged in this fire were demons and souls in human form, like transparent burning embers, all blackened or burnished bronze, floating about in the conflagration, now raised into the air by the flames that issued from within themselves together with great clouds of smoke, now falling back on every side like sparks in a huge fire, without weight or equilibrium, and amid shrieks and groans of pain and despair, which horrified us and made us tremble with fear. The demons could be distinguished by their terrifying and repulsive likeness to frightful and unknown animals, all black and transparent. This vision lasted but an instant, and how can we ever be grateful enough to our kind Heavenly Mother, who had already prepared us by promising in her first apparition to take us to heaven? Otherwise, I think we would have died of fear and terror. And you see, and here's the thing, this is another thing that also kind of worries me about these apparitions, right? And of it being of the mother, right? Lucifer is a transgender, you know. So, and so is Loki, right? He even had kids, as a woman, dressed up like a witch. And I'm not saying that these are one and the same. Uh, or have the same intention or anything like that. But I always like to draw parallels between the different ideologies and schools of thought, religious concepts, so people can see, that even in older days that there was uh, similar points of view, even if they were uh, distorted, right? Or and with a lot with the mysteries, especially in particular with the mysteries and the occult, what we actually see a lot of times it is that distorted version being hidden in plain sight, presented as something holy or good or pure, right? When we look up at Our Lady, who said to us so kindly and so sadly, "You have seen," is described in the book of Enoch. To save them, God wishes to establish in the world devotion to my immaculate heart. And see, the sacred heart, immaculate heart, to me, this correlates to Venus and this Venusian ideology, which once again correlates to Prometheus, which once again correlates to Lucifer, right? And keep in mind that Venus also had Aphrodite, right? And the twin aspects of Mercury and Venus, right? Which was Mercury, or Hermes, right? And Aphrodite or hermaphrodite, right? Hermaphrodite, right? And when you see the Statue of Liberty or Libertas with those liberty spikes, which derive from the goddess Hecate, right, which is the goddess of witchcraft, sexual promiscuity, and I can't remember the third one right off the top, idolatry or something down that vein. But it's witchcraft, sexual promiscuity, and something like that. And then you see also the holding of the flame of Prometheus, right? The light bearer, you know. And then the chain on his foot, because he's been released from the bottomless pit. You know, that's the chain that he was shackled with. Loki was shackled, all of this, right? Like, same deities, shackled. And he's wearing a dress, he's in trance. And think about Baphomet, right? And this trance, you know. Think about, you know, when all of these socialist revolutions take place, or these rebellions take place against the conservation of nationalistic Christian ideology, what you see is always a trans revolution, an LGBTQ revolution, this perversion of the natural order and morality, this destruction of the nuclear family, you know, pornography, these types of things, right? Just debauchery in all of its forms. You know, because that's what this God represents, right? It has this debaucherous nature to it. You know, so what are we seeing with, you know, Fatima and the Sacred Heart and all of this? Are we seeing it in its true, like, pure form, right, of the divine feminine? And then what we're seeing with Lucifer and the Scarlet Woman and all of this, right, the Whore of Babylon, we're seeing, you know, the inversion of that, right, from the enemy? Or are they all one and the same and just being disguised as another thing, right, through the mysteries? You have seen hell where the soul of poor sinners go to save them. God wishes to establish in the world devotion to my immaculate heart. If what I say to you is done, many souls will be saved and there will be peace. The war is going to end, but if people do not cease offending God, a worse one will break out during the pontification of Pius the 11th, I think. When you see a night illuminated by an unknown light. See, when you see a night illuminated by an unknown light, and think about the nighttime God being Nox or Pan, right? It's kind of interesting in this illumination. This is that, once again, this is that, you know, Columbia or Prometheus or Lucifer, you know, and we see all of this symbolism within the United States of America heavily, right? With the 50 stars on the flag representing the 50 sparks that Prometheus stole, you know. And then the 6 red and 7 white, or vice versa, the 13 stripes on the planet. There's 13, right? You see this over and over and over, right? This symbolism, even down to the colors. You know? When you see a night illuminated by an unknown light, know that this is the great sign given you by God, and that He is about to punish the world for its crimes by means of war, famine, and persecution of the church and of the Holy Father. To prevent this, I shall come to ask for the consecration of Russia to my Immaculate Heart, and the communion of reparation on the first Saturdays. If my requests are heeded, Russia will be converted and there will be peace. If not, She will spread her errors throughout the world, causing wars and persecutions of the church. The good will be martyred. The Holy Father will have much to suffer. Various nations will be annihilated. In the end, my Immaculate Heart will triumph. The Holy Father will consecrate Russia to me, and he shall be converted, and a period of peace will be granted to the world. Right, and eventually Russia did come around, right? We see that now after the fall of the Soviet Union, the rise of Vladimir Putin, right? We've seen this, Russian Orthodox Church and this massive, shift towards Christianity, in Russia, despite of what your political feelings are about Russia, right? Religiously, spiritually, they do appear to be headed in the right direction, right? Or aligned with the right God, which is Christ. The third part of the secret revealed at the Cova de Iria Fatima on the 13th of July, 1917. Notice it's always 13, 13, 13, 13, 13, 13. Notice? I'm not making this stuff up, man. I write in the obedience to you, my God, who command me to do so through this excellency of the Bishop Laria and through your most holy mother and mine. After the two parts which I have already explained, and when it's talking about this great star illuminating the heavens, right? Think about the Hopi prophecy, right? The purifier sitting in the heavens. Think about what Chris Bledsoe said, right? The star of Regulus on the horizon at the Great Pyramid before, and that it was blue, and it appeared to be blue, and it turns red. One could even kind of say the same thing similarly about a 3-eye atlas, which is, third eye atlas, asteroid terrestrial impact last alert system survey. They thought the thing was like a greenish blue or a teal color, and now they see it's red. And it's sitting behind the sun. And it's hyperbolic. And, if you've seen the images of this thing, I don't know if this is anything natural about it at all, right? Not just, it's thrust and acceleration, like where it comes from. It's, these nickel alloys and all of this, That's where all of the signs are predominantly taking place, guys, is in the heavens, in the stars, because they transgress against their appointed times and orders and things like that in the last days. Like that's why the moon turns to blood and the sun goes white. Like all of this stuff starts to go haywire because the order of things is breaking down. It's this time of chaos before the destruction. Right? Because the God of chaos and darkness, or chaos and destruction, is being unleashed upon creation. In the Egyptian mythos, he was Apophis, right? He was this large crocodile type of god, and he was underneath the boat, right, which is the ship of Earth, right, coming up from underneath us and being fought off by Set and all of this, right, and Thoth, the Ra, all of this, right? The red sun. And I've shown you guys those images, quite a few times of that, right? These depictions, during these hieroglyphs, right? And I've also spoken about what hieroglyphs actually represent. These pictograms and hieroglyphs are forms of symbolism. And remember, Confucius is talking about symbolism being the downfall, right? And that symbolism is the power, that those who control the symbols controls the world, because a symbol is not the same as a word. A word has power. Yes, the tongue has the power of life and death, but a symbol embodies an entire energetic archetype or idea or concept. And when we make that connection visually to said symbol, right? Even if we don't understand what we're looking at, what we're watching, our brain makes that connection. And it unlocks this part of us within our subconscious that goes back to, that hero's journey, that story of humanity, that ancestral story that is within all of us. We begin that awakening or a process because of that. We become activated by just the mere connection to said symbol. So when you see the negative symbolism on your television, on the internet, and on movies, right, of the all-seeing eye and all of these things, these debaucherous base symbols, right? You're connecting to it. You're connecting to the energy. You're connecting to the archetype. It's connecting to you on a subconscious level, whether you're aware of it or not. And then you're feeding into that energy, because where attention goes, energy flows, whether you're conscious of the connection or not. And behind each one of these symbols, because the symbol is the same thing as, it's a meme, it's mimetic magic, it's a sigil. And the sigil represents the magician. Right? And in this case, the magician is the deity or the demon or the fallen angel. That's what I'm talking about with the whole Kek the frog and the Groiper movement, right? This Kek god, which is, this god of, of darkness, and then you wonder why politics, and this political movement is so divisive and, base and all of this. It's like, that's why. It's connected to that deity. It's connected to that energy. And when we associate ourselves with that, we associate ourselves with that. And we're consciously choosing that. Just like when we're choosing the spirit of Jezebel or Mammon or any other thing. And here's the thing, once you know about it, you're no longer innocent of it, right? So the fact that you're being put on notice right in this moment means you no longer have an excuse to do it. Because the light, right, like followers of Christ cannot yoke themselves with darkness, right? You can't serve two masters, So if you're serving these deities, this energy, this demonic force, right, you're not serving God. After two parts, which I've already explained, at the left, Our Lady, and a little above, we saw an angel with a flaming sword in his left hand. Flashing, it gave out flames that looked as though they would set the world on fire. But they died out in contact with the splendor that Our Lady radiated towards him from her right hand, pointing to the earth with his right hand. The angel cried out in a loud voice, "Penance, penance, penance." And we saw an immense light that is God, something similar to how people appear in a mirror when they pass in front of it. A bishop dressed in white, we had the impression that it was the Holy Father. Other bishops, priests, men and women, religious, going up a steep mountain at the top of which there was a big cross of rough hewn trunks, as of a cork tree with bark. Before reaching there, the Holy Father passed through a big city, half in ruins and half trembling with halting step. Afflicted with pain and sorrow, he prayed for the souls of the corpses he met on his way. Having reached the top of the mountain on his knees at the front of the big cross, he was killed by a group of soldiers who fired bullets and arrows at him. And in the same way, there died one after another the bishops, priests, men and women, and religious and various lay people of different ranks and position. Beneath the two arms of the cross, there were two angels, each with a crystal aspersorium, in which they gathered up the blood of the martyrs, and with it sprinkled the souls that were making their way to God. In the great joy of Easter, I greet you with the words, when asked in principal figure in the vision of the Pope, Sister Lucia replied at once that it was. She recalled that the three children were very sad about the suffering of the Pope and that Jacinta kept saying, Santa Padre, poor Holy Father, I am very sad for sinners. We did not know the name of the Pope. Our Lady did not tell us the name of the Pope. Finally, mention was made of the unpublished manuscript with Sister Lucia. And this is the crazy part. Like, they have all of this stuff they've been sitting on, and they brought this letter out time and time and time and time and time and time and time again, and then only decided to reveal it, decades and decades and decades and decades later. Uh, Hopefully, you guys can still no screen share. Fuck. We don't have a screen share. That's weird. Have you guys been able to see the screen? Just let me know. Have you guys been able to see the screen? If you could let me know, please. I appreciate it. While I was reading that. Yes, no. I think it's on a delay or something. Okay, nobody's gonna let me know. Oh shit. All right, I guess I'm gonna switch gears to something else now. Can anyone let me know on whether or not you guys have been able to see the screen share or not? Just please let me know that. Someone in the chat. No? Fuck. Alright. Okay. I don't know what's going on with my shit, why it's not doing that. I think I'm gonna start a new stream. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna start a new stream so I can fix this. So that's what I'm gonna do. Um, I'm gonna thank you guys for listening, I guess, to this. I will be going live in just like 2 minutes, 3 minutes. I need to get this fixed because I don't like that at all. It's driving me crazy, actually. So, all right. So if you guys want to donate support, PayPal, Cash App, Facebook Messenger, like, share, subscribe, and I'll be going live in just a minute. I'm gonna get this fixed.